Hello, everybody. It's Graham Cofe with another My Music. I hope you're all well. I told you that some of you would be depressed this week because of the England football result. Well, that's just tough, isn't it? That's all in the past now. Now what you need to do is focus on what I told you should be focusing on in the first place, which is music, and that will soothe the soul. And you can completely forget about 11 guys randomly running around the football pitch trying to beat the Spanish, which was never going to happen. Right. We will be speaking to my friend Cam here any minute now. But first, this.
Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop.
I feel I ought to say before I get lots of hate there. I did watch it. God, it was exhausting. But there you go. But the best team won, really. They just outplayed us all the way through, which is there. We just need to learn to play. We need to learn to play as a team for a start. And we need to learn to go and attack and try and win these things rather than just sit back. How are you, sir?
I'm okay. I mean, obviously, Scottish hopes and dreams were dashed some time ago. So I kind of watched last night's game with a degree of ambivalence. But I think you pretty much summed it up there.
Yeah.
Best team in the tournament won, it's fair to say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think
I'm with you. I'm more a music person than a football person. So,
well, there you go. And I think some people forget as well. You know, at the end of the day, it's just a game. I know. It's like a big tournament and all of that, but it's just a game of football. You know,
there were some very, very funny, upset people on the internet today.
Yeah. It's funny how personally we all take these things, isn't it? But you know, at the end of the day, it's there's a huge amount of luck and chance in any of these things, as much as there is skill at the end of the day as well. So
I think it's fair to say England used up quite a lot of luck and chance to actually get to the final.
We probably had our fair share there. Tell me about yourself, sir. You said just before we came on, I said, well, we're going to talk about your life and music. You said, and you know, there's been a lot of other things in your life as well. What other things are we talking about? What's what are the some parts of Cam?
Well, I think probably the oddest thing that I did when the Cateran stopped playing, that was my kind of punk band that we'd just done a tour with Nirvana, which was Nirvana's first trip to the UK. And we'd done some amazing gigs with them. And I remember kind of looking at them at one of these little gigs in a little pub somewhere in England at that time and thinking, these guys are really good, but you know, we've been playing this music for about 7 or 8 years and it's going nowhere. It's never going to take off.
Oh, really?
And by that stage, I was already a bit older than them, and I'd kind of been working for a record company. I'd worked for Rough Trade for quite a long time in distribution and stuff like that, and that's kind of where I first discovered Nirvana. I think I was probably one of the first people to ever come across them, because a guy called Calvin Johnson from K Records in Washington had basically sent me some Nirvana singles when it had just come out, the first limited edition one, and he was just trying to sell them as an unknown band that he was doing a bit of distribution for. So I kind of bought them, and that was Love Buzz. And I remember putting it on and thinking, this is a great single. I should send it out to friends that are really into this sort of thing, and I did, and that's how we ended up going on that tour with Nirvana and Tad. And it was a fantastic tour, but at the end of it, I kind of thought, I'm just getting too old. I'm getting too old to be playing in grotty little pubs around the UK again. And we'd already toured around Europe a few times, and we'd had a brilliant anarchic time, and we played with loads of people, but I was just kind of burned out, really. So I kind of opted out shortly after that. And I was literally sitting in a dentist one day picking up the only time you'd ever read a glossy magazine back then was sitting in a dentist. And I picked up a copy of Vogue or something that was or Cosmopolitan that was sitting on the dentist table, and I kind of flicked open, and they had a feature on this thing called grunge, which I'd never heard about because it didn't have a name when we were playing. And I kind of said to my wife, who's with me, look, all my friends are in Vogue and all our clothes are in Vogue. And it was like, what? How did... And that was grunge took off, and obviously Nirvana went on to become one of the biggest bands in the world or whatever. But by that stage, I'd kind of done all the things that I'd kind of wanted to do, and I kind of didn't want to do it anymore. But I kind of knew that I wanted to do something, and after a kind of long roundabout journey, I ended up being a screenwriter, and then specifically a screenwriter for animation, then an animation producer, and then I ended up owning a stop motion animation studio and making little films for BBC and Disney and TV series for BBC and Disney and stuff like that. And I never at any stage thought I would end up being an animation producer, but I had the studio for about 20 years. And really, it was only just a combination of Brexit and COVID that made me think, oh, I can't do this any longer either. I'm going to concentrate, try and go back to playing as much music as I can, because all the time I was in the film industry, music remained the thing that I loved most. And I was playing and kind of writing songs, but my day job was working as an animation producer. So that was a fantastic experience. Very different to the music industry, but really, really fun to do.
It's an absolutely amazing story. If you could, I mean, hindsight's an incredible thing, isn't it? Which is, probably very prevalent and relevant considering we're talking about the football. But if you actually could go back to that time, knowing what you then knew, would you have gone back? Would you have tried to pursue the grunge, as it were?
I kind of wonder about that. So round about that time, I'd started to become quite interested in. Well, I'd always been a bit interested in country music, and although we were compared to Husker, and we were a really good fit for Tad and Nirvana on that tour. That was the sort of stuff that we were playing. We were probably a bit more in the kind of hardcore punk thing. We'd done I remember doing a TV show in the Netherlands with Fugazi once, and I thought, yeah, they're the dream. That's what we would be like if we were straight edge and didn't drink all the time. And I kind of loved all that. But even by the end of the Cateran, I'd become interested in. In fact, the last single that we did had a pedal steel guitar on it, and that was about 1990. And you think how long that gap was until Uncle Tupelo came along and stuff like that. And that kind of marriage between punk aesthetic and punk approach and alt country kind of took off. But so I think if I'd stayed involved, I might have moved into already at that stage. I think the two bands that were around doing that sort of thing at that time were the Replacements, who are fantastic, and the Mekons were in that area as well. So I think that's what I would have done. But when I say I was burned out, I was like properly burned out. So I kind of needed a break, and I had a break, and I kind of had a young family at that time, and I think I was realizing that we were four guys from the Highlands who'd kind of grown up together, basically, with unlimited opportunities to drink and carry on around Europe, and it wasn't being very good for us. We didn't have management companies or record companies to try to keep us in check. We were just kind of we were a bit kind of wild back then. So I'd probably done enough, and it was probably the right time to stop.
Yeah, and you're here. That's the thing, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's and rather sadly, quite a few folk who were around then aren't here any longer. So that's
Yeah.
most definitely the case.
I think sometimes it's very easy to look back and then go, oh, I wonder if,
I, I,
especially around music, but you know, but then I guess you need to look at all of the great things that you have done that you wouldn't
yeah,
have ever
and
done, right?
they were, and it was amazing. I had chances to work in Los Angeles for a little while and stuff that I never got to do with music. And I got to travel around, the world, going to different events and stuff like that. So yeah, that was fantastic. And I got paid regularly, which I didn't happen in music very much either. So yeah, it was fine. It was real good. And I never stopped. I never fell out of love with music, and which kind of brings us to where we are now. The music that I'm playing now is with people that I've been friends with for a very long time, because I never stopped playing music. I just stopped recording and gigging and stuff like that. Partly because I was having a really good time in the animation industry and not feeling the drive to do that. And yeah, but it reached a point where friends were saying, you've got lots of songs, why don't you try and get them out to people? And I kind of went, yeah, that's a good idea. Who'd have
Yeah.
thought?
Have you kept in touch with anyone from that time
Yeah,
musically?
I have. I have. In you can have a world exclusive, Graham. On the 14th of September, myself and the three remaining members of the Cateran, and Ali, who's the bass player in Boulder Fields and other things that I've done, we're turning up at the Hope and Anchor in London to do a gig all
Wow.
together for the first time since. And that will have Sandy, who Sandy and I set up the Cateran. He was the original singer. And Murder, the guitarist, who played with Joyriders and various other folks. So we're going to do a one-off gig with a friend promotes a sort of punk rock night at the Hope and Anchor in Islington. So 14th of September, we're going down there, and we're all going to play together. We've played it separately, but we've never actually all got together. We certainly haven't gigged since back then. So that'll be kind of fun.
That will
It'll be a bit
it will
mental, but it'll be fun.
it will be good. It will be really good. Have you practiced that at all yet, or is that in the future?
We're just starting. We're not. It's not going to be a Cateran tribute act. We'll play a couple of Cateran songs, but the Cateran was a long time ago, and actually we've never. This is pretty indicative of the Cateran. We never actually got the stuff on to digitize the stuff. If you want to listen to the Cateran, you're going to have to go and buy an old album and listen to it, because we just didn't, and so you won't find it on Spotify or anything. You might find some bits and pieces on YouTube and stuff. But yeah, so we may as well. We're going to play new songs, keep ourselves interested. But so far, yeah, it sounds great. It sounds really noisy, and still that same kind of mad Highland energy that we always had hasn't faded away. One of us might die during it, but it's so fast and sweaty,
So let's hope not. Let's hope not. I think it's a magical thing. I think it's a magical thing. I got back together with the guys in my original band about 5 years ago now, when
Right.
one of them got remarried,
Right.
and we were really young when we first got together. I mean, we were like 14, and Troy
Right.
was 10, right? The drummer, and I mean, he's gone on to have a world-class career in music. I mean, he drummed for Amy Winehouse, and he's this week he's just been orchestrating and playing conducting the London Symphony Orchestra at the Royal Albert Hall with Cypress Hill. So he's had a fantastic career in music.
He's
at the top of his game, but it's funny. It doesn't matter what you've done or what you go through and where your life takes you, when you bring back a group of people that have spent some time together in a band like that, just all clicks into place again, and it's lovely, that feeling. It's really nice.
No, it's you can't replace the memories and hell that are 100-mile back journeys in a transit van. For better or for worse, it bonds you in a way that's indescribable.
That shouldn't be ever, part of human existence. But it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that was back in the days when, let's face it, everybody in the band needed to know what a distributor cap was.
Absolutely.
and how to push up a hill. It's just
definitely how to push.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh, well, look, yeah, that sounds great. Hope and Anchor's a great venue, so
it is a great venue.
That goes well. And Dave Grohl, if you're listening, if you want to, go for a pint that evening.
Well, he wasn't in Nirvana at the time, but I've met him since, because oddly, that thing when a band split up, people go on to do different things. But in fact, it was our road crew that went on to do all the really good things. Murdo's brother Alex went on to be tour manager for Nirvana and did lots of stuff with bands across, with lots of really big bands. I think he's worked with people like Black Eyed Peas, Rolling Stones, and stuff like that. He's done some really big things in the industry. And Ian, who worked with us on our last record, he's been doing onstage sound for the Foo Fighters ever since then. He's just been a permanent fixture with them forever, and various other folk that we knew ended up staying in the business and having really successful careers. I mean, Russell Warby was our agent at the time, and I think that at that stage he only had 2 bands. We might have been his best one at that point, but Russell went on to become a booking agent for Nirvana and Foo Fighters, Jack White, Strokes, and all of these folks. So Russell certainly made the best of that opportunity, and has become one of the great agents, booking agents in the world, really.
Yeah. Tell me about your current music. I mean, there's a definite sort of storytelling in there. I mean, actually, have you found your time in film has kind of developed that kind of storytelling art?
I may a little bit, but actually, what I found is my time in music developed my screenwriting. I only became a screenwriter because actually all the things that you learn about being a songwriter equips which is directness and brevity and just trying to get to the core of what you're writing about. All of that is really important in screenwriting, and so it was really, really helpful in getting started to be a screenwriter. They cross over quite a bit, but probably the other way around. It does a bit, but I've always kind of had a very direct and uncomplicated approach to songwriting. I have to basically write what I feel, and that's kind of it. And not all the songs are really about me, but they always contain about 80% of me, and they're usually they're inspired often by people that I know, or people who are having difficult times that I have had reflected back in other people's lives and journeys and stuff like that. So my stuff is very personal, but it tends to be quite instinctive about just what I'm feeling at any given time, really. It is therapy, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Yeah. But do you think the young man that was back in your more grungy type band years ago, do you think he would have looked at the music that you are making now and actually understood where you are with that, or do you think they'd be surprised?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think the young man back then would have given a shit what an old guy was doing. and that's the joys of being young. But yeah, I think as I said, the sort of there's you could probably see a timeline to the replacements. It's funny. I mean, back then I remember being smitten with Jay Mascis and Dinosaur Jr. Then you look at Jay Mascis's back catalogue over the while. He's done acoustic albums with his Martin guitar, and in fact, I saw him a few years ago playing an acoustic set. It wasn't like acoustic set like other people's. It's a acoustic guitar plugged into about 25 distortion pedals, but with the odd acoustic sound. But so I kind of look, and Bob Mould from Husker has ventured into the more acoustic world as well. And briefly, I played in Grant Hart from Husker Du in his band, and Grant at that point was playing a lot of kind of acoustic, stripped down music. So probably the young me back then would have just wondered why it took me so long to get round to playing more acoustic guitar.
Yeah. Do you feel like, because I do, I mean, I just think when you actually look at where some of those musicians have ended up in terms of their music, that there's almost now like a new folk music that has developed out of quite a punk music in the past.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think that's partly probably because I think it's might be led by music technology, in so much that as everybody knows, you don't. Although I made the last album in a recording studio, and I love going into recording studios. I absolutely love it. You can record perfectly high quality music at home with just a mic and an acoustic guitar and some plugins and whatever, and it's easy to do that. So I think the directness of it appeals to people, particularly who came out of the kind of punk world, where that directness was prized in lots of other areas, and actually just being able to go and do it and not have to jump through too many hoops is hugely appealing. And I think that's probably what drives. But I think you're right. There is definitely a kind of post-punk. I don't mean post-punk in I mean long time after punk. Acoustic world that's out there. I think one of my favorite artists of all time is Conor Oberst, who I love his work. I love his songwriting. I love the fact they worked with the Felice Brothers, who I absolutely adore as well. And that world, you can see that kind of that collision between the kind of punk approach to the punk anger and sort of drive attached to a kind of acoustic sensitivity or whatever, that I think Conor Oberst and Bright Eyes is right at the peak of that. So yeah. I think there's a real crossover, and I think a real thread that runs through from. I think that thread runs right back to the Velvet Underground, actually. I think through all sorts of bands that currently in that kind of stripped down acoustic world, where darker lyrics are kind of key to the overall sound, really.
I think some of it, as you say, has probably come out of the necessity of how you then take this material and tour with it or present it live through time. I mean, I'm thinking about someone that's been on here before now, Christian Hirsch, who and Fred Bong's been on here several times. Basically, I mean, Frame Muses were quite a punky type band back in the day, and she's got 50-Foot Wave, which is a raucous noise, etc. But she has her solo albums, which kind of probably take her more into the kind of folky acoustic kind of sound. and part of that is the fact that there's a necessity to take these songs on the road, both with a band sometimes, and then other times it's just not cost effective to take a whole band. So you've got to get the guitar out and just play them on your own, you know.
Absolutely, that's absolutely the case. Yeah.
So I think that determines where, you know, it almost feels like a schizophrenic sound sometimes. I think that's coming out of artists, but actually, when you strip it back, I think it's quite an obvious rationale for why it develops in that particular way. And also, I think, do you find from a sort of auditory point of view as well? Do you find that you can do something very different with your both the way that you write and also your vocals, etc., by stripping things down?
Yeah, and definitely, and it was a huge kind of late career boost me, because I'd literally never played live with an acoustic guitar ever until 5 years ago, and that's what leads me back to the Hope and Anchor. I'd gone down to London. This is a bit sad. I'd gone down to London to see Bob Dylan and Neil Young in Hyde Park, and I'd gone down for the weekend, and I'd contacted Chris, who puts on gigs at the Hope and Anchor, to say, did you have anything on this weekend? Because I don't mind going to see bands in a park. I'm not a massive fan of going to see bands in the open air, but I'd much rather go and see a band at the Hope and Anchor. And I said, he said, anything on? He said, I have, and I'd really like you to come down and play at it. And
wow,
and I'd never played an acoustic guitar live. I'd never performed by myself anywhere. So I said, okay, I'll do that. Packed my guitar, came down to London, and did a set there. And it was, I absolutely loved it. I loved the chance of just standing up with a guitar and playing. But I'd literally had never, it's the first time I'd ever played solo anywhere. I'd never even played in a duo. I'd only ever played in the band with drums, bass, guitars. And so I kind of left it very late in life.
Yeah.
But what it meant was I developed a real enthusiasm at a time where, I could have just carried on playing in kind of, electric guitars with other 3 or 4 piece bands or whatever. But it gave me a real kind of sudden jolt to try doing something else. I've now played quite all. I've played by myself. I've played duos. I've played lots of things, and actually just enjoy it more and more. And at a time where I think other people might be getting a bit kind of fed up with doing these kind of acoustic gigs or whatever by themselves, wherever. I'm loving it. It's like great, yeah.
Do you think now then, if you then now go and do the band thing occasionally or whatever, that in itself then has a new kind of new emphasis for you, because it's kind of like, well, I know I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
So because you don't have to do it, it's probably a fresher feel for you than.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know about you, but I don't think there's not very much in life beats just being really loud in a rehearsal room with other musicians. I absolutely I love that sort of slightly nauseous feeling that you get when you play so loud you're almost
it's too loud. Yeah.
Yeah, it was too loud quite a long time ago. But yeah, I kind of love that kind of physicality of playing with electric guitars and kind of walls of feedback that make your ribs tingle or whatever. Yeah, all of that. I still love it. Still love it.
Yes, I've enjoyed that on numerous occasions. And then about 5 years ago, I was doing some work in a sector where I actually got to meet audiologists, and one of them said, "Yeah, I know." One of them said, "I'll give you a free test," and they said, "Oh, you've got a slight loss of hearing in this area." And I said, "I'm really not surprised. I'm surprised it isn't both ears, to be honest." But
Yeah,
There you go.
I'm scared to ask what mine is now. I get by. As long as I can hear what you're saying, that's good enough.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. As long as I can still hear music, I'm absolutely fine. It just may be that I can't hear you first time you say something. So it's you know, I've got to be looking at you in order to acknowledge that noise is coming. But yeah, I mean it's I I think. Do you sometimes think when you listen to young musicians talking about music and the way that they approach everything, do you sometimes think some of you are missing out on some of the fun? Because I do. I just think, when you talk about like locking yourself in a rehearsal studio or whatever and putting everything loud and all of those things, maybe silly things that we did when we were younger. And whatever, and you hear like musicians going, "Oh, you got to be. It's about you got to be think about the future, and you got to think about the business, and you got to think about this and that, and all of it, and think about, when do I get out of this bit and whatever." And you just think, blimey, when we first started, we just there was a group of us, we all got on together, and we just wanted to make music.
Yeah, I think you kind of don't want to come across as being sort of like one of these old guys that goes, "Oh, it was all much better in my day," but we were certainly less kind of hemmed in by any expectation of what we had to do. And that's probably why we had a terrible career because we did whatever we liked, and we were terrible at if somebody wanted to put out a record of ours, we just thought, well, that's great. We never, and we'd get paid for doing some gigs, and some gigs you'd end up not making money. But nobody was sitting working out, can we have a career out of this, or can we, how do we maximize our profitability? We were just trying to maximize the good time.
Yeah.
and we were left, although we were touring around, we had a few indie albums out at that time, and I had a publishing deal with Beggars Banquet, and so we did some industry stuff, but largely we were just left to get on and do what we did. And we all the bands that I knew took playing seriously, but it was taking it seriously entirely on your terms and not trying to fit into any kind of model. There were, obviously there were pop bands around at the same time who were doing their thing, and I had no idea what that involved really. It was, that was a different world to anything that we kind of knew. But I didn't really kind of envy them being in that world or whatever. We were having just such a good time.
But I think a lot of people that were in those bands, though, I mean, I think a lot of us developed a resilience and developed a creativity out of the fact that there wasn't any kind of certainty and whatever, and people did follow. I mean, actually, you talk to people that were around at the time and then have gone on to do this and that. The breadth of creative things that people did afterwards,
absolutely,
is amazing, really.
Yeah.
And I think that's tremendous. I sometimes. I talk to a lot of young musicians on here, and I think I'm envious in a way that some of them are so switched on. I think it's brilliant that they get that they get the help that they get and the education that they get. But I do sometimes want to go, do you know what? Just if it doesn't work out, life can still work out.
Yeah.
Just know that you're building skills. If you could turn to your younger self, would you say that? Just enjoy the journey because it's going to be fun.
I've said it quite explicitly lots of times, is that and this does sound a bit like sort of like graybeard career advice, But you're absolutely right that all the skills that you learn from just being a sort of chaotic creative, young chaotic creative, they're incredibly transferable into all sorts of other things, as long as you kind of value what you're doing.
That's right. Yeah.
If you value it yourself and make that real personal commitment to it, this is what I say to you, which is still what guides me in writing songs. I write songs that I feel, that I make an emotional connection to, and that I think might make an emotional connection to other. And that's been the kind of guiding star for me, really, from when I first started songwriting. And if you can make that be your focus to try and do work that is meaningful to you and hope that will be meaningful to other people, and just keep doing what you do, because you're absolutely right. Everything that you're learning every day will you can turn it into a job, a career, or add value to other things that you do at a later date. And it won't do wrong. But if you just spend all your time just chasing other people's praise or validation or whatever, you're in for a shit time. It's because you're never really going to get it unless you've actually been that first thing, which is that you really care about what you're doing yourself. And that's the only way, really, to be validated by it as an artist. I think as a musician, a painter, a filmmaker, or whatever, you have to really care about it yourself first, and care really passionately about it to be validated, really.
It's been a pleasure talking to you today. One last.
It's been a pleasure talking to you as well.
one kind of last double question for you. Out of this set of songs that you've just written, a favourite, and then as a kind of follow up from that, song that you didn't write, which you wish you had.
I think the favourite on the album is one that is not. People really like "Wipe Out the Stars," and that's been the one that lots of people pick up. But "Horse and a Sling," which is effectively just about what we've been talking about, is kind of helping people find a way to get through shitty experiences. "Horse and a Sling" is probably my favorite. If people see it on YouTube, they'll probably I put a little bit about what the song is, where the song came from or whatever, and that's probably my favorite. Other songs that I wish I'd written. God, that's really difficult. "Freak Scene" by Dinosaur Jr.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's still whenever I hear that song, I was working for Rough Trade one of these days, and it came in as a new release, and I remember these days I'm just dropping the needle on it and going, fuck, that's epic. And whenever I hear "Freak Scene" by Dinosaur Jr., it still just lights up my day.
Well, that's tremendous. I actually got to meet them and interview them when I was 21 and working for a radio station. So a long time ago, working for a radio station in Sunderland, and it was quite a gig. Actually, there's a little story here. They were being supported by Teenage Fan Club.
Okay. Yep.
On the gig, and somebody had decided to make the drum riser for Teenage Fan Club out of pallet wood.
Oh, excellent.
which any drum technician listening, it doesn't work. So midway,
how high did they bounce?
Well, no, it's completely the opposite. So midway through a song, the drummer literally just went. All you saw was like arms up here, trying still to hit the snare. Which was and it kind of had to put a pause in the middle of the proceedings for the evening for about 10 minutes while they kind of rebuilt something for the drums to be on. So that was very eventful. If you were there, do let us know. It was certainly an evening, but yeah, they're definitely a group of people that I shall remember for a long time, getting to speak to very early on. what a tremendous song to have picked. So thank you so much for that, Cam. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks for having me on, and all the best. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Folks,
you. Bye.
Hope you've enjoyed this. This has been My Music with Cam. We will be back with more of the same very soon. 400 episodes of this now. Wow, you lucky people. What can I say? They should give someone a medal for it. Probably not me, but maybe some of the guests. We'll be back, as I say, very soon with more. If you've enjoyed it, please do share. Until then,